Hello, welcome to another episode of the Gateway Gamers. My name is Brian Marvel. I am running solo today to bring you some of my favorite filler games that I've recently played. If you don't know what a filler game is, it's kind of smaller type games that you play in between the bigger, meatier games. They're usually card games, quick teaching, quick playing type games. So I'm bringing some that I've kind of played recently in my recent game days. The first game I want to talk about is the Ghostbusters Card Game, published by Renegade Game Studios, came out in 2018. It plays for 2 to 5 players. This game I acquired recently at Ollie's for like, I don't know, like $7. I didn't know much about it, but obviously I love the Ghostbusters, being a child of the 80s. And with the movie coming out now this weekend, actually, I was curious to kind of get it to the table and check it out. So the game itself is pretty easy to learn, easy to set up. It's a set collection game where you're trying to earn the most points by collecting sets of ghosts and characters' equipment. If you're familiar with the movies, they're all here. All the ghosts, all the items, all the iconography. So to set up, you shuffle the deck of ghosts. You put 12 in a circle, and then you put the ghost trap above the card that's at the top of the circle. And then there's a direction marker that goes in the middle of the circle, and it's pointing clockwise. And this is the way that the trap's going to be moving around a circle, because the game is the manipulation of that ghost trap to get to the card that you want to get to make a set. So on your turn, you could play one of 2 action cards or discard a new card to draw a new one. And action cards are pretty self-explanatory. It's a lot of the characters from the movie themselves. Like I said, the Ghostbusters are very present, and it'll let you move the ghost trap 1 card counterclockwise. You can move the trap card 3 spots clockwise. You can swap the position of any 2 cards in the circle to kind of move them to where you want. You can move the trap to any ghost that's a value of 2. Some of them pop out, and you can capture the ghost of the top of the ghost deck. So you just kind of draw the top of the ghost deck, and that's what you get. And then there's a card, Gozer, that'll capture a card that's adjacent to the ghost trap. So if there's a card that you're not on, but that's next to it, you can capture it. So there's a lot of ways to kind of manipulate what cards you want with the cards that you kind of have in your hand. And then after you play your 2 action cards, then you capture the ghost that's the ghost trap is currently on. So your first turn is moving the ghost trap where you want it, and then your second turn is just drawing the card that the ghost trap is on, for better or worse. If it's a ghost that you want or if a ghost that you not want, it's just kind of dependent on what you have in your hand. Now, the cards themselves, like I said, are all characters from the movies. If you're very familiar with the movie characters, we have the Ghost Jogger from the second Ghostbusters. We have the Ghost Train. You have the Taxi Cab Ghost. You have the Librarian Ghost. And then you also have the Dream Ghost from the first movie, if you know what scene I'm talking about. It's very awkward, but it's there. And each one of these ghosts have a value and a symbol on them. So we have 1 value ghost, 2 value ghost, 3 value ghost. I think it goes up to 5 value ghost, depending on the ghost. I think Marshmallow Man's 5, Slimer's 5. So characters like that are worth more familiar characters. And you're just kind of going around, you're collecting these monsters, and then they have symbols on them, which again, if you're familiar with the movie, in the first movie, Bill Murray's character is quizzing 2 of his students to see if they're psychic by holding up a card, and has like wavy lines, a square, a star, or like a plus symbol. So those symbols are in the opposite corner. And those, again, you're trying to create rows of them. You're trying to collect sets of those. And the number is how much the ghost is also worth. So it just, you have a lot of point salad type of things that even if it's a card you don't specifically want at the moment, it could help you still at the end. And that's kind of it. That goes around. Once all the first 12 cards in the circle are taken, that's the end of round 1. You put another 12 out. Once they're all collected, that's the end of the game, and then you kind of score everything up. So you have, as I said, ghosts with numbers on them, 1, 2, or 5. This is your base scoring. And then there's different iconography. If you're able to collect 4 ghosts with the star symbol, that's a certain amount of points. There are numbers that have slime, and those are negative points. The more ghosts that you kind of capture with that slime, you'll lose points. However, if you have Slimer, he is actually worth more if the more slime cards you kind of have. So again, you can mitigate the good to bad of what these cards kind of do. And that's really all the game kind of is. It's very play cards, move a trap around, get what you want. There's no real interaction between the other players. There's no take that. There's no real thought to the game. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. It was just kind of there. The theme just is kind of tacked on. There's no real reason why certain cards do certain things, and it's fine. It was a whatever game. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It's probably not staying in my collection. I'm glad I got it for as cheap as I did. I know there's better Ghostbuster games out there, but it did its job. It filled in between two heavy games, and we kind of had fun playing with it and talking about Ghostbusters, but I don't think this would be a game that would ever kind of come out again. The next game I'll talk about is Ecosystem. Ecosystem is designed by Matt Simpson and published by Genius Games. Plays for 2 to 6 players, 15 to 20 minutes. Ecosystem is a fantastic little set collection drafting type card game. The point of the game is you're creating an ecosystem in a forest. So you need all the type of animals that an ecosystem kind of has in those environments where you have deer, bear, rabbits, wolves, those type of things. So what you're doing is you're creating a 5x4 grid of cards of this ecosystem. Now, the neat thing about that is the puzzly kind of aspect to it, where this ecosystem you're creating, your placement of cards matters, because where you're placing the animals, where you're placing these type of environments is how you score at the end of the game. So to begin the game, each player gets 10 cards in their hand. You take one, you place it face down, and then everyone kind of flips it up, and it's one of the animals or ecosystems that you're kind of creating in your environment. And then you take those cards and trade them to the person next to you. So you don't know what's coming next. So you got to kind of plan, all right, what's my game plan here? What's my goal? What's my strategy that I want to complete? Because you really don't know at first what you're going to be doing, because the 10 cards you have in your hand are going to be passed around, so you don't know which ones are going to get taken out of there. You don't know what the next group of cards that are coming your way are going to be. So this goes around and around. Everyone creates their ecosystem. Those 10 cards get placed down in front of you, and then each player gets another 10, and then the game kind of continues. Not much interaction besides kind of playing the cards around, but it doesn't really matter because you're thinking. This is a very thinky, a very puzzly type of game of where you'll be placing things. Once you kind of have everything down, then you do the scoring. So you have an idea of what the scoring is because you have a scorecard in front of you, so you know where you're going to be putting things before you kind of play. So the different type of animals, different type of cards you have are the bear. And a bear is 2 points for each bee or trout that's adjacent to it. And then the trouts are 2 points for each dragonfly or stream that's next to it. A dragonfly point total is how long the adjacent stream is. So if you have a row of stream cards and they're all connected to about 5, that card's worth 5 points of dragonfly. The stream cards, whoever has the largest stream gets 8 points. The second largest is 5 points. So as I said, if you have 5 streams connected, your stream is 5 long. If that's the longest, then you're getting 8 points. The next person who has like 4, 3, or 2 would get the 5 points. Bees are 3 points for each meadow that are adjacent. Eagles are 2 points for each trout or rabbit that's within 2 spaces of where you place the eagle. A fox is 3 points if he's not adjacent to any bears or wolves. And then wolves are whoever has the most wolves gets 12 points. Next is 8. Next is 4. So how many wolves you have in your grid affects the end game. Meadows, for each connected meadow, you get a certain amount of points. So if you have 5 meadows connected to each other, you get 15 points, 4, 10. So you really want to play those meadows so that they're adjacent to each other. A rabbit is worth 1 point, and he can switch locations with 2 cards. And a deer is 2 points for each row and column containing at least 1 deer. So where you're kind of placing those deer is really important. So when we got this game out and we set it up, I was like, oh no, this looks a lot. It looked very intimidating. It looked very confusing. I'm sure I just blew a lot of your brain just kind of going through how that's all scored. Once you're kind of playing, it all makes sense. You kind of got to have a goal. Like, all right, my goal when we played was I want to have the most wolves and I want to have the longest stream. That was it. I didn't care about anything else. I was like, that's all I want to do. Streams and wolves. That's my bread and butter. So anytime someone passed me their hand, I looked for wolves and I looked for streams. As the game was going and you start to lose those options, I started looking for, all right, what is good with the streams? So I started looking at the trouts, I started looking at the dragonflies. So that was my next goal. So I started going after those. Once they started running dry, I started looking for eagles, which are worth points for the trouts. I started looking for rabbits so I could move some stuff around. I started looking for foxes that are worth 3 points as long as they're not next to my wolves. And then that was it. That's all I kind of focused on. The only problem with that is at the end game scoring, there's something called diversity gaps. When you're scoring everything, things that are worth 0 points, you could possibly lose points for. So if you have 6 things that don't score you anything, you'll lose 5 points. Now, where that matters is I didn't play any meadows, I didn't play any bees, I didn't play any deer. So they scored me 0 because I didn't have them in my environment, in my ecosystem. So as I started losing these things that I wasn't focusing on, I started losing points. Now, it's not automatically losing points. If you have a gap of like 3 or 4, you gain some points, you don't lose many points. But I was having these huge gaps because there was cards I just didn't play, so they were worth 0 points when I did the scoring. Really interesting game. We played it 3 times in a row. It was super quick. Once we started moving with it, once we started really getting a hang of what we were doing, the game was fantastic. The art on this game is magnificent. It's literally just cards. They're smaller than usual, which is my own complaint, is they were hard to shuffle because they were tinier, but when you're creating a grid of the 5x4, it's good to have those tinier cards. But the art on every card was fantastic. It's literally just cards of art. There's no text, there's no iconography because you don't need it, because you have a little chart to the side that kind of tells you how everything scores. So that's Ecosystem by Genius Games. Fantastic little card game if you can get a hold of it. They have a marine biology one that focus on like coral reefs, so it's more fish and things if that's what you're into. And then I think recently they came out with a savanna one, so it's more lions and savanna animals like that, if that's more your speed. I'm not sure if they play different, like point wise or whatever, but I imagine the basic gameplay is the same. But again, Ecosystem, fantastic filler little card game, great little puzzle game. Would be great for families as there's not much text. The next game I'll talk about is All Hail the Goblin King. This was designed by Jacob LaBouffe of Just Very Games. Plays for 30 minutes, 2 to 6 players, and is currently on Kickstarter. All Hail the Goblin King is a set collection, card management, take that type of game. So the point of the game is you play as these different type of goblins who are creating presents using trash. Like they're creating presents for the Goblin King. They're presenting these wares and tokens that they want to kind of present to be the most favored goblin. The setup for the game is each person picks one of their goblin type characters. Each goblin has a corresponding 3 trash items. So if I picked the business goblin, he has some paper with him, he has buttons, and then he has a brown box. That's your starting hand. You separate the different decks, so you have trash cards, you have gift cards, and then you have spell cards. So you separate those 3 decks into different piles, and then you place 3 of the gift cards from the gift card pile face up. So those are the 3 items that you're competing to build before your other players. Turn order is extremely easy. You start by drawing one of the trash cards from either the top of the deck or the trash pile, and then you can negotiate a trade with other players. This was something that was kind of interesting. It's not really established in the rule set that I have how you go about kind of negotiating, but what we kind of did was like, hey, I have this. Does anyone trade this for this? It was mostly if I had extra of an item and I didn't need doubles, I'd be like, hey, I have extra string. Was anyone willing to trade something for string? You could look for something specific, but I was just trying to create a hand of different items and not have too many doubles. However, you don't have to trade on your turn. That's not something you have to do, so you can kind of skip that if that's not something you're into. And then you can build or play any spells. Building the spells was a unique, interesting little way to do things. So you can trade in 3 trash cards from your hand, or on your goblin card, your character card, the 3 items that are listed, one of them in the middle, you can trade that middle item at any time for a spell card. So, as I said, if on the business goblin, his middle item was buttons. So instead of trading in 3 different cards, I could take that. If I have any button cards, I could trade that in for a spell card, so I'd trade 3. It was a unique little way of kind of like, oh, again, this is my specialty. I have buttons on my business suit, so this is my specialty. I'm trading that in for a spell. And then the spells do different things, like any other kind of game would. You can interact with other players, you can sabotage other players, you can help yourself in some kind of way. So there are things like a crow. A crow would help you draw 2 trash cards. Telescope would have you look at other players' cards and hand. A peel, the banana peel would have you skip another player's turn. There was something called a turtle bear, and that would deflect a spell that was cast on you or another player if you want to help somebody else out. If you played a wizard card, you would discard half the trash in someone's hand. So nothing out of the ordinary you haven't seen before in other type of card games. So you can figure out what the goal of the game is or what these cards kind of do. And then on your turn, you can also build a gift. So if you have the items that the gift needs, you can build them. So there's like a tooth necklace. So if you have string and 2 rat teeth in your hand, you can build this necklace. If you have the string and 2 macaroni boxes, you could build a macaroni necklace. If you have ink in 2 boxes, you could build a novel. If you have paper, a macaroni box, and a button, you could build a puppet. So that's kind of it. You're just kind of set collecting in your hand to build towards one of these items. After someone completes 3 items, the game's over. They are going to be the most revered by the Goblin King for making the most presents for him. Overall, the game it's fine. It's a good game. It's not nothing we haven't seen before, but I enjoyed some of the actions and some of the mechanics that this game was kind of presenting. I really liked the idea of each kind of goblin having their own special item that they could trade for spells. I liked that the game wasn't overly complicated. This is a game that I might bring to my classroom to kind of play with my students because it's not text heavy. It's not super rules heavy. It's not anything that I can't explain to them that they won't understand. I liked the iconography of everything. I knew what I was looking at. I knew what I needed. I liked that it was silly. And that's another thing I think my students will appreciate. It's very goofy. It's very silly. The items that you're creating look childish as they would, as if some kind of goblin creature is making it using these 3 items. I like that the artwork is very different. It's not, each string doesn't look the same. Each bottle cap is a different type of bottle cap. You could tell that there was love. There was love in this game for being a small independent publisher. You could tell that they put the work in. And I think it's a decent game that, with it being backed and with a few things being polished, this could be a great product. Like, this is somebody's dream that they made, that with the help from Kickstarter and people, that this could be polished a little better and really create something unique and something fun. And I hope it gets back. So if you are interested in this, All Hail the Goblin King is on Kickstarter at the moment. JustVeryGames.com. If you want to learn more information, reach out to them on Instagram. If you're more curious, this something that I think if you were looking for a filler family type game, this could be something you add in your collection that you should check out. The next game I want to talk about is a preview copy of a game called Sing, Act, Draw, Shout, which hopefully will be coming out very soon. The game's a great social game. It's a mix of Blockbuster, the card game. It's a mix of Pictionary. It's a mix of charades. It's really neat, kind of quick game, or if you're playing with people that you really know or people or with strangers, it's a great way to kind of play. So the edition that we have is called Sky. So what Raquel is doing is she hasn't created the main game yet, but she's created these smaller versions, smaller decks that she's going to cons with. She's sending out to influencers to kind of get the hype up for the game before creating it. It's a really great viral marketing type system. And she created this version called Sky because she's a flight attendant. So she made what she knows. These are different scenarios and different questions that have to do with travel and being in the sky. It's a great way to kind of design your game for what you know. It's a great way to kind of create viral hype for the game and to create these smaller, as she calls them, a la carte type games of the bigger game that she hopes to create in the future. It's a really different creative way to kind of get your game going. So how Sing, Act, Draw, Shout plays is each player is going to get some paper, some pens. You're going to separate the conversation cards from and create a deck, and then you're going to grab the regular cards and create a deck. And then you're going to have a timer ready. You have 1 minute for each round. Each player is going to pull a card from the main pile, and there's two possible scenarios you could have. You could have a card with 3 different things on it that you kind of have to convey using either singing, either drawing, or acting it out. You want them to try to guess what you're trying to convey. So the one is sight. So it's Niagara Falls, Panama Canal, Northern Lights. You have to draw that, sing a song that you think closely relates to it, or act it out in some way. There's movies, so you have Titanic, Soul Plane, Slumdog Millionaire, so you can quote the movie, you can sing My Heart Will Go On, you can do some Bollywood dancing from Slumdog Millionaire to kind of convey, to have the other people guess what your card has. If you happen to draw a card that has a situation on it, this is a little like sentence scenario that's kind of set up, and it has a blank on it. So one of the situations is a passenger appears to be hallucinating on a plane and began screaming that they saw blank. Before you kind of perform the card, you're going to write down what you're trying to convey. So if you write, we'll say Goblin, tying it back to Goblin King, you then have to perform this card, wanting the people to guess Goblin. So you're going to act out the scenario kind of in a way that makes it obvious that you're a goblin, or they're seeing a basketball on the plane. So it's a game that really wants you to be creative. It really wants you to be outgoing. And then if you're able to get the other player to guess it, if the first person who guesses it gets a point, as well as you get a point for being able to correctly convey what you're doing, or what movie or situation or whatever event you're kind of conveying through your actions is. After the 1 minute round is complete, you're then going to grab a card from the conversation deck. And what this is, it's 2 kind of personal questions or scenarios that you might have been put in. And the one is like, have you ever had a flirty or scandalous encounter with a foreigner or someone random you've met while traveling? Or it could be, have you ever hitched a ride or picked up a stranger to join you on your journey? What's the most ridiculous or expensive thing you unnecessarily acquired while traveling? So it's a lot of, like I said, travel questions. And as long as you can answer these questions, as long as you don't have a scenario or an answer or response that's too boring, or you just opt out, you don't get a point. But if you're able to have a fun story, like if you bought something unnecessary while you're traveling, then you get a point. The game's supposed to end once someone gets to 8 points through the various cards and questions. However, we just kept playing, and I think that's obviously something you could do, because it's a really fun social filler game. It's like I said, it's what I love about Blockbuster with the performance and the quotes of the different things. It's the option of being able to draw if you're good at drawing. It's the option of being able to perform if you're a performer. I like that, having different ways to complete your goal depending on your own skill set. This is a great game for a group of friends that know each other well, that enjoy being goofy. This is a great game for learning more about people that you maybe don't know too well. It's just, I enjoyed the social aspect of this game. It's just different, but it takes a lot of things that you kind of already know, and it can open people up and get them out of their shell a bit if you play this kind of at the beginning of a game night. So this would be a great one to bring out first before you start playing these type of different games, just to kind of loosen people up and get a little silly and a little crazy. So Sing, Act, Draw, Shout hopefully will be coming out soon. Follow them on Instagram. Check out singactdrawshout.com. Follow that. Hopefully we could get this game made. If they're gonna be going to a Kickstarter, I'll be sure to shout that out a later time. Or if they just come to retail, be sure to follow that. But yeah, great game if you're looking for a social filler type game, or just a goofy party game with some drinking and some light fun. This is a great option. The last game I'll talk about today is the one that caught us by surprise the most, and probably was the biggest hit of our little filler game day. Stool Pigeon from Barrel Age Games. Plays for 2 to 6 players, 10 to 20 minutes. This is a hand management, memory, push your luck, take that game. It sounds like a lot, because it is a lot, but then it's really not a lot with how simple this game really is. In Stool Pigeons, you're playing as the head of a notorious pigeon mafia family, and you are using what you have to eliminate cards in the crime scene in front of you or add cards to the rival family. So how it plays is you're going to set up 4 cards face down in front of you. You're then going to look at the bottom 2 of the 4 cards in front of you and memorize what they are number-wise. And then you flip them back down, and that's the only time you could look at those cards unless you have cards that could kind of mitigate that. So you have to really memorize what's there. Then each player takes a turn drawing a card from the top of the deck or the discard pile. And then you're taking that card and swapping it with one of the 4 cards that are face down in front of you. The goal of the game is to have the least amount of number points that are in front of you. So you're looking to have low number cards in that pile. So as you're kind of flipping these cards around, when you put a card underneath, you take that card and put it in the discard pile. And if it's a special card, their power is activated. So there's different type of pigeons that could be activated. The Stool Pigeon lets you peek at any card, either one of the cards in front of you or a card of another player. There's a pigeon called Bamboozle, which lets you swap any 2 cards, again, being one of your cards or a card of another player. There's a Vendetta card, which lets you take a peek at any card and then swap any 2 cards, again, your cards or an opponent. The Kingpin card lets you recruit or eliminate any card, so you can discard or eliminate one of the 4 cards in front of you to only have 3 cards, or you could give another player 5 cards in their area. And then there's the Rat. If you manage to flip the rat then just goes right back to your crime scene. So now you have 5 face down cards in front of you. The only way to get rid of it is to have one of these pigeons swap. So you could play a Bamboozle, so you can swap the rat to an opponent. Now, it sounds really interesting, and it is because it's a lot going on. There's a lot to memorize. There's a lot of things that you kind of have to pay attention to, because you're going to be looking at your cards, you're going to be looking at your opponent's cards. I have a terrible memory. So I was awful at this game. I was just going by pure luck, a hope and a prayer that I would have the lowest amount of number. There was one point when I was playing with my sister that I had a 10 card in front of me. That was one of the 2 cards I flipped up. It was a 10. I said, I need to get rid of that card. That card is no good. Too high. I managed to play a Bamboozle card to swap the 2 cards. I gave her another card. It wasn't the 10 card that I was hoping. I think I ended up giving her like a 2 because I wasn't paying attention, because I wasn't memorized and like focusing on what I was doing. Another thing that you can kind of do in this game is called eliminate the witnesses. So if someone manages to play a card, like a numbered card that's a 3, if you know there is a 3 in one of the 4 cards that you have face down, you can slap the pile, flip the card that you think is a 3, and that will eliminate it from your area of play. I wasn't even chancing it. I could not remember what I had in front of me. I was not chancing it, because if you manage to do that and you're wrong and you flip the wrong card, or it's not a number that you thought you had, you get an additional card face down in front of you. There was no way I was going to try to chance messing that up, because I knew that I would. Between all the cards that get flipped around and moving around and my terrible memory, there was no way I was going to remember what was in front of me. The game keeps going until someone knocks on the table to kind of initiates the end of the game. Or so if you're pretty confident, if you feel like you've looked at your cards and memorized your cards enough, and you say, I think I have the lowest amount in front, you'll knock on the table, and that kind of initiates the end of round. So the next person knows it's the last turn. They kind of do what they need to do, and then it comes back to you. You all flip the cards up, count the numbers, and the person with the lowest amount of cards in front of them is the winner. The rat is scored by taking the top card of the deck, and that's how much it's worth. So If you manage to end the game with a rat in front of you and you flip a card, it's a 2, it's worth 2 points. If you flip it, it's a 10, it's 10 points. And then there's also the meatball card, which is worth 0 points, which is the big fat meatball. So that's kind of it. It's a great, great filler game. I really enjoyed this game. This was another one of those games where we kind of set up, and I'm like, this seems like a lot with all the different rules and whatnot, but they did a great job with reference cards. You have a reference card in front of you that lets you know how many of each card there are inside of the deck. There's a great reference of what each power does. It's really simple, and then even in instructions, it's even further if you needed it. So for a game that easily took us, I think the box says 5 minutes to learn, 7 minutes to play. I think it took us even less time to learn, and we played it for an absurd amount of times in a row because it was like a 5-minute game each time we played. So Stool Pigeon by Barrel Age Games. Check it out. Fantastic little deduction, little take that memory game that doesn't overstay its welcome. It's easy to teach, easy to learn. Excellent game. So there's 5 filler games I want to highlight. Thank you for listening. Be sure to rate, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. Be sure to check out Redbubble and TeePublic for some merch. It really helps out. Just buy a sticker, buy a shirt, represent us. And thank you again so much, and see you guys later.